Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second part of this little storytelling about foundational stories. I wanted to start with sharing something very personal. After I finished recording the first video and I turned off the computer for a moment and paused, I noticed an impulse in my body, a certain tension and energy in my right hand, and it felt a little bit like my hand wanted to go up, but then there was like a con- contracting force putting my hand down. And I became very curious about it. It didn't feel threatening. It felt like there was a memory stored in my body that wanted to be told, that wanted me to pay attention to it. So I connected with the sensations in my hand and stayed waiting for an image or a deepening to arise. And very quickly I realized that this was an implicit memory of bodily memory of something I experienced when I was in the first grade of the primary school. And it must have become a foundational story for an inner conflict that, with lesser extent, but still is present in me as um, some parts of me are connected to this story. And I didn't plan on it. This impulse came, and I feel like sharing it with you, as this is a foundational story, or maybe foundational myth. I can't be sure what really happened. It's so long time ago, but my body remembers, and this is how my body remembers that, and this is how it manifested in life. So it must have been shortly after we started education, as 7 years old children. I remember my teacher saying, out of the blue, at least this is how I remember it, saying, looking at us with after a moment of pause, looking at us and saying that she already knows that I will be the only person from the whole class, and there was around 35 children, that would be able to study, that will study, and that will have successful career that is different than doing simple jobs like construction work, cleaning, or so on. And I want to remind that we were 7 years old. And I remember what became very present in my body. It was paralyzed. It was shrinking. It was making myself very small. And it was enormous fear that I couldn't, of course, verbalize and understand back then, but now I know that it was fear of not belonging, fear of being different. Doesn't matter that different means, I don't know, smarter or better educated or better equipped to education also by the family situation and so on and so on. Doesn't matter that different was about to be a compliment. Different at the age of 7 meant not belonging, meant being ostracized and put to the side by the group. And I remember what happened after. And I also have physical proofs of it, as some time ago I found like a diagnosis from the school psychologist. I remember that after that, I literally stopped talking, like at school, to a teacher. I remember that the teacher would ask a question, and I would have this impulse to raise my hand up, because that's true. I was, yeah, I was pretty smart back then, and also back then. And I knew the answer I wanted to say. I also had many ideas what we could do with the class, also, like, for fun, for the carnival, or I don't know, whatever, for the school theater. And I remember this, exactly this gesture, like there was a foreign hand pulling my hand down. And I was lucky in a way that because we were moving a lot, I changed the primary school after 2 years. So I could also start writing my narrative and building my identity in a new way. So I didn't have to become a prisoner of this story. But what happened that at this moment, there were parts of me that developed, parts of me that learned that certain qualities of being extraordinary, let's put it this way, can be threatening for belonging. So I would oftentimes in my life find myself in these bodily sensations of fear and paralyzed and like no, when I would try to manifest my uniqueness, as simple as that. And I was lucky to develop also other parts that would support my story writing in different directions. But this part that would hold this fear of not belonging would take some time for me to heal. And by heal, I don't mean disappear. It's this part still is holding this of wisdom of the fact that uniqueness can make us be outsiders or make us feel that we are oppressing others as well. Because I remember the other aspect of it, I felt very cruel towards the kids. I felt it was so unfair that she said it, and I felt that I was source of their suffering or their shame. And I'm extremely grateful for this part of me to tell me this foundation, to tell me again this foundational story of mine by showing up through my bodily impulse. And I'm mentioning it with also like a lot of heaviness around my heart, like even this kind of squeeze in my stomach, for one more reason. When I was actually at university, um, there was a like social platform created in Poland called Nasza Klasa, means our classroom, a little bit like a Facebook, but people were organized by like the classes or school years they attended. So I found my peers from these 2 years of education that we shared, first and the second grade. And there was around 15 people who joined this social media, whatever. And I remember the terrifying discovery that from these 15 people, okay, not everyone, but from this 15 people group, I was indeed the only one studying. Many of them have finished education very early. Um, Many of them were involved in very simple jobs, or at least they didn't go to study. And there is nothing wrong about it. You can, of course, be extremely fulfilled and extremely powerful, creative, amazing person, whatever your education. My heaviness is not about that. My heaviness is about the power of self-fulfilling prophecies. And of course, you can say, come on, there are many factors that influenced your situation, their situation. Of course. However, I still feel the power of this moment. I feel the power of this foundational myth that was created back then. And I say myth as it has this magical element of putting a little bit like a spell on us that we carried with us. I believe that we carried with us for years. Almost 30 years later, I'm still carrying this story in my body. I'm carrying it as an impulse of, hey, be careful when you want to be visible, be seen. So maybe now I'm recording this potentially YouTube video, but I'm doing it with part of me being anxious, and I'm needing to attend to it. And it connects me with something I wanted to um, yeah, to also share. So to inspire your investigation, your personal research on foundational and other stories. I will come back to my presentation. personal, intimate point presentation. Where is it? I hope it's this one. Yeah, that can be this one. One moment. Okay. I'm sure you recognize these people on this drawing, on this, I believe, lithography. It's of course Adam and Eve, another foundational story of much more collective character than my primary school myth. Primary school myth. Oh my God, sorry. It's funny side effect. I'm in Poland, so I speak Polish a lot, and I noticed that English comes with effort. So Adam and Eve's story from that we know from the Bible or from our education has influenced the collective imagination or collective unconscious in the way we perceive femininity, masculinity, men, women, concept of the scene. And I'm mentioning it as, again, there were other alternatives available, but there were people who were holding power over storytelling, who chosen to include in the written version of Bible and include in teachings just certain interpretations. We all know these interpretations, so I will not repeat them. I want to only share that there were other versions, and one of them was that Eve was not created from a rib cage of Adam, but that they were both created simultaneously, and that Adam was created in a perfect body. That's how it's transmitted, whatever perfect body is. Perfect godly creation of a body, and that Eve was carrying a soul, and that by sharing her breath with him, she actually gave him the life. So without her, he was in this super body, but without life, and she gave him this special gift. And if we pause for a moment and imagined how the history would develop if in the holy book for the religion that was so holding so much power over human mind in certain cultural circles, if this story was different, if this story was telling that Eve was source of life, that Eve was soul, and that she was needed, that she was equal, and that she was, that they both together created wholeness. And if we came back to this Jungian understanding of stories, that they are not about external people or external figures, but they are about parts of us, then Eve could be representation of the archetype of the feminine energy, and Adam could be representation of the masculine. And it would show us that for our individuation, for our process of becoming, we need both qualities. We need feminine and we need masculine. And what happens when there is dominant narrative of a feminine being inferior? One of the effects can be the political or an economic system we are in which efficiency, productivity, precision are so much valued, and care, slowing down, imagination, intuition are rather considered like out of mainstream or not successful or not promoted. There is another version of the story that is present in old Jewish writings that says that what made God angry was not the fact that Eve ate apple, so they did something that was forbidden, but that they went to hiding. So God got mad because they created secrets, shame, and hiding. And again, what is a powerful message in it? That the mistake, if we want to use this word, is not about following the desire, but in being ashamed of it, in hiding. And again, how different would be our culture if what is not appreciated was shame and hiding versus desire. I'm just imagining what is the power of this interpretation and what power we have now to come back to the stories, not only the personal stories, but also cultural stories, to both. Those that influenced us, influenced our felt sense of worth, felt sense of self-worth, and found new interpretations. Not only new stories, but new meanings of them. I'm just getting all excited when I think about it. Ah, I talked a lot about her at the circle, and I will just say it quickly now, because it's one of these topics that makes me really on fire, that it's Little Mermaid. I mentioned at the circle that that was the only VHS cassette that we had at my family home. So I would watch it on replay. Like, she would be my favorite person in the Walt Disney World, as she was also the only one I knew. Just to give a context, I grew up in Poland shortly after communist collapsed. So 90s were very, especially beginning of 90s, were very poor. And we, on one hand, we were open to the West, but we didn't really have access to all the luxuries or the cultural products, so to speak. So yeah, I would love the story. And only later I realized how powerful impact it had on me. If you remember, and I'm sure of many other girls and women, you probably remember that Little Mermaid, she needs to give up her voice if she wants to pursue her dream of marrying a prince. And I will just make a pause here. It's so obvious, and it's so it's so obvious, and it puts so much potential on us for creating new stories in which women don't have to give up their voice to pursue their dreams, and marrying a prince is not the only dream they have. And again, here comes my question: what is the story that influenced you and you would like to write differently? It can be a family story, it can be a Walt Disney story, it can be any story. How would you write it differently? And yes, you have power and you have right to do that. So we talk about rewriting, changing the stories. And this is a message I would like to share at the end. I will read it, even it comes from my notebook. It's not like a wisdom, that you put on Instagram. I exactly wrote it how I put it in my notebook, my journal. To change the story, first honor its function and mission, and receive trust of your inner and outer system. Otherwise, narrative yo-yo effect and strengthening a story of I am a failure. And now I will give some light of what do I mean by it. Because as I said, it's like a sentence I took from my journal that I very identify with, but it's not clear. I know that. So we talk about changing personal narratives as well. So, for example, a personal narrative that I would like to change. I think it's the easiest to explain it or share it on example. Is that I would like to live a story of a person that is more minimalist. I would like to create less, but more with more care and calmness. I would like to have less objects, less notebooks, less papers, less everything. I know that the chaos of objects I create around myself is influencing my mind, and it's also influencing my husband because I'm like really messy. And um, And it really bothers me. It's not like, oh, this is how I am. It does bother me. I would like to have this sense of healthy control over my physical environment. And you may say, okay, Hanya, then just clean your apartment, become a minimalist, create new habits. And here comes the tricky part, because there is a mission, there is a function, and there is wisdom in telling a story, writing a story through my behavior of a person that is surrounded by many objects, that it's abundant in ideas, notebooks, books, I don't know, clothes. And I first need to honor it, because there are also parts of me, precious parts of me connected to it. There is part of me that is afraid of poverty, part that grew up in a home that there was a lot of anxiety around money, and times where it was really, really, really difficult. But also the family story of living in communism. I can't remember that. I was too small, but definitely my families can. And then before communism, Second World War, and many other wars, and poverty in Polish countryside. This all creates fear of not having enough, fear of hunger that is on the level of my body, that's not level of my mind. So yes, it gives safety to my ancestral nervous system, all these objects around. I can also observe in the behaviors of my ancestors, like my grandmothers and grandmothers, or even if with my father, that they need to be ready for every happening, that they don't know when the abundance will end or when another disaster comes. So there is always enough butter, bread, toilet paper, clothes, everything, just in case. And it makes sense. Their life have been extremely unpredictable, with a lot of changes, with a lot of loss, with also a very unpredictable political situation. So there is wisdom in surrounding myself with objects. There is wisdom in creating safety by having all these things around me. And I need to first see these parts of me, that are anxious, before I can provide a change. Because I need to ensure them that I can be safe having less. And it's not only by saying, it's by changing the neural pathways, by changing my nervous system, bringing my attention with intention to moments of safety that are happening when I have just a little, when I am surrounded by just nature and a bottle of water. Creating stories about the moments in which nothing is happening and I am having like very minimal amount of input, very minimal amount of objects around me. Intentionally creating new stories and practicing safety in my nervous system. And only then I can start slowly, and again slowly, step by step, not by revolution, but step by step, I can create new habits, create a little one, then wait for my nervous system to integrate it, for parts of me to accept this new identity. Give it time and space. And this is what I kind of meant with narrative yo-yo effect, that if I create a oppressive change, there would be too much anxiety in my system, in the system that is older than me, to accept it. So I will fail with my change. And I will start writing the story of a failure, because I again tried to create a minimalistic life. But if I did it without respecting all parts of me, I will most likely fail. And then I will be also writing the story of there is no hope for you. This is how you are and you can't change. That's you. Accept it. I don't remember who said it, but I read recently this sentence that if you want to change something, you need to first accept unconditionally what is and love it and embrace it. And only then the change is possible. What is kind of counterintuitive. So by saying that, maybe not being the most clear with it, maybe as this is very personal what I'm sharing. I would like to invite you to also recognize not only what is the new story that you would like to be writing, what is the new narrative emerging in you, but also how your system, your inner system, will be reacting to potential change. And what is the adaptation and survival power of the story you have been writing, or your ancestors have been writing, or your culture have been writing. That it's usually enormous intelligence of survival in every story that may be difficult even. It's probably a lot I could talk about. That's such a juicy topic. But I would rather now pause and wait for you and listen to your stories and your inspirations. It's quite late at my place. I wish myself good night, and I wish you beautiful time of the day that you are experiencing now. Ciao.